My fiancée announced, "I'm wearing black to the wedding. White is too basic." I said, "It's your day too." Then she posted her edgy bride outfit, my grandmother's funeral dress she'd taken from my closet. When I showed my family the photo and they recognized it immediately, I'm 31 male, work in logistics, coach youth basketball on weekends, and 6 months ago I proposed to my girlfriend of 4 years in the parking lot of the diner where we had our first date. Not glamorous, but she'd always said that's where she fell for me. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. I'm writing this because I genuinely don't know how I missed what was right in front of me for so long. And honestly, typing it out is the only way I've been able to make sense of it. My fiancée had always been what I call aggressively quirky, hated mainstream everything, thrifted her whole wardrobe, called herself an anti-conformist. Early on, I found it charming. She had a point of view, you know? She wasn't just going along with things. But over the 4 years we were together, that quirk slowly hardened into something else. Something that needed to perform. Something that needed an audience. I just didn't recognize it for what it was until it was too late. Wedding planning started out fine. A little bumpy, but fine. My mother suggested a ballroom venue she loved, and my fiancée smiled and said she found ballrooms too expected. I smoothed it over. My mother let it go. We moved on. I told myself it was just a personality clash, that they'd warm up to each other. Classic mistake number 1. Then came the dress conversation. We were on the couch one evening when she turned to me with this look she gets. Chin tilted slightly up, like she's already decided how the conversation ends, and said she wasn't wearing white to the wedding. "Okay," I said, eyes still on the TV. "Ivory? Champagne? Black?" I looked at her then. Black. White is so basic. Every bride wears white. I want to actually stand out. And here's where I made the mistake that I replayed in my head about 100 times afterward. Instead of having a real conversation about what that would look like, I said, "It's your day too. Wear what makes you happy." I genuinely meant it. I just didn't think about what she'd do with that sentence, because to her, that was a permanent, unconditional green light to do literally anything and frame it as self-expression. 2 days later, she posted on Instagram. Caption was Edgy Bride Era Blackheart, and the photo was her spinning in our hallway in a floor-length black dress, grinning at the camera. I recognized the dress before my brain had even fully caught up to what I was looking at. My stomach just dropped. That dress had been hanging in the back of my closet for 3 years. It belonged to my grandmother. She wore it to church, to formal dinners, to every significant occasion in the last decade of her life. When she passed, my mother pressed it into my hands and said, "Keep this somewhere safe. It still smells like her perfume." I kept it in a dry cleaning bag, zipped shut, tucked behind my winter coats. I never specifically told my fiancée about it because I didn't think I needed to. I didn't think anyone would go through the back of my closet, pull out a garment bag they'd never seen before, put on whatever was inside, and then post it to the internet. That just wasn't a scenario I had prepared for. I called her immediately. "Hey, that dress in your post. Isn't it perfect? I found it in your closet. It fits like it was made for me. I was thinking it could actually be." That was my grandmother's. She was buried in that dress. Silence. Then, "Oh, well, it's really beautiful though. And it's not like she's using it anymore." I stared at my kitchen wall for a solid 10 seconds. "Take the post down," I said. "Right now. You're overreacting. My grandmother wore that dress to her own husband's funeral. Take it down." She took it down eventually, 4 hours later. By then it had already been up long enough for mutual friends to see it, screenshot it, and share it in their own stories. The damage was done. But what I didn't know yet was that the actual damage hadn't even started. I called my mother the next morning. I wasn't trying to start anything. I just needed to tell someone because I was carrying this feeling I couldn't name. Somewhere between grief and a cold, creeping suspicion that I didn't actually know this woman as well as I thought I did. I described the dress, described the post, and my mother went quiet for a long time. "Send me the screenshot," she said. I did. 20 minutes later, she called back. Her voice was different, controlled. She said, "Your aunt recognized it. Your cousin recognized it. It's already in the family group chat. Your grandmother's sister has seen it. I closed my eyes. I need you to handle this, she said. Not angry, just exhausted in a way that was somehow worse. Because I can't. I went home that evening ready to have the hardest conversation of our engagement. My fiancée was already on the couch, arms crossed, clearly having spent the day building her defense. Before I could say a word, she opened with, I think your family is being dramatic. My family watched my grandmother get buried in that dress. It's fabric. Fabric doesn't have feelings. We do, I said. The people who loved her do. She pivoted immediately. You never told me it was special. It was just hanging there. How was I supposed to know? And that's when I first saw it clearly. She didn't apologize. Not once. Every single sentence was engineered to relocate the blame somewhere else. Onto my silence. Onto my family sensitivity. Onto the dress itself for being too beautiful to leave hanging in a bag. There was no version of events in her telling where she had done anything wrong. I told her the dress was going back in my closet, and she was not wearing it to the wedding. She stared at me. You said it was my day, too. It's not your dress. You're choosing a dead woman's clothes over your future wife. The room got very quiet after that. I need you to sit with what you just said. I told her. She didn't respond. She went to bed. And over the next 2 weeks, she ran what I can only describe as a campaign. First came the emotional angle. Tears, long silences, comments dropped into unrelated conversations about how she'd never felt truly supported in our relationship. I held my ground. Then came the social pressure. She started telling mutual friends that I was controlling her wedding vision and stuck in the past. 2 of her bridesmaids texted me directly asking me to let her express herself. I didn't engage with either of them. Then she went straight to my mother, showed up and made the argument, with a straight face, that wearing my grandmother's dress would be a tribute to her memory. My mother looked at her and said, "That's not your decision to make." Didn't raise her voice. Didn't elaborate. Just said it and waited. My fiancé came home that night furious. Your mother humiliated me. My mother told you no. I deserve to feel beautiful at my own wedding. Then we'll find you a dress. There are thousands of them. She went silent for 3 days after that. I thought maybe something had shifted. That maybe she'd finally let it go. She had not let it go. About a week into the silent treatment, I was looking for our insurance documents in the shared filing cabinet in the second bedroom. We'd moved in together 8 months before the engagement. I found a folder I didn't recognize with her handwriting on the tab. It said, "Wedding." I opened it. Inside was a printed email chain between her and a photographer I'd never heard of. Not the one we hired together 6 weeks earlier. A completely different one. The emails were dated across the previous 2 months. She had been planning a parallel wedding aesthetic this entire time. Different florals, different layout. A dark romance editorial concept she'd been building behind my back while we were sitting together at vendor meetings and making joint decisions about centerpieces. The last email in the chain was dated 3 days prior. My fiancé had written, "The dress situation is almost resolved. Once I have it, the whole look comes together. I'll send styling photos before we finalize the shoot agreement. The dress situation is almost resolved." She wasn't attached to the dress because she loved it. She was chasing it because it was the centerpiece of a photo shoot concept she'd been developing without my knowledge. My grandmother's funeral dress was a prop in an aesthetic project. I put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. I went to the bedroom, took the dry cleaning bag from my closet, drove it directly to my mother's house, and left it there. I said nothing to my fiancé that night. What I did instead was call my best friend, who works as a paralegal. I laid out the entire situation. He listened carefully and then said that since we had a joint wedding account I had opened and she was listed as a secondary holder, I had the right to close it unilaterally with proper notice and documentation of a dispute. He also said I should pull the transaction records immediately and document everything. Texts, the Instagram post, the emails. I pulled the wedding account records the next morning. Over the previous 6 weeks, $4,300 had been moved out in small increments. Nothing large enough to flag on its own. Together, the amounts added up to a retainer payment for the parallel photographer and deposits to 2 other vendors connected to her secret concept. She'd been draining our shared wedding fund to finance a version of our wedding that I was never meant to see until she unveiled it. I made copies of everything, physical copies and digital backups sent to a private email account. Then I let a few more days pass. I needed her to believe I had moved on from the dress argument. I needed her comfortable. On a Sunday afternoon, while she was on her laptop in the living room, I sat down across from her and placed a printed copy of the email chain on the coffee table between us. She looked at it. Her face moved through several expressions in about 2 seconds. Recognition, calculation, then a kind of coldness that settled in. "That was private," she said. "It was in our shared filing cabinet. You had no right. You moved $4,300 out of our joint wedding account over 6 weeks to fund vendors I've never met for a wedding concept you never told me about, while using my grandmother's dress as a costume." I kept my voice level. "Explain that to me." She went straight to offense. "You have been suffocating my creative vision this entire engagement. I was building something actually beautiful, and every time I try to share it, you shut it down. With our money, without telling me. It was going to be a surprise wedding, an upgrade. You don't understand aesthetics, and I was tired of compromising everything. I understand $4,300. Then she shifted. Her eyes got wet. Her voice softened. "I just wanted one thing that felt like mine. One thing that wasn't filtered through your family's opinions. Nobody filtered anything. I asked you not to wear my grandmother's dress to a photo shoot." The softness left her face very quickly. "What do you want from me?" she said. "Flat now. I want the $4,300 returned to the wedding account by Friday. I want written cancellations from every vendor you contracted without my knowledge. And I want the dress to never come up again. And if I don't, then I close the account entirely. We dispute the withdrawals with the bank, and we have a much larger conversation about where this engagement actually stands." She laughed. "You wouldn't do that." I told her I had already initiated the closure paperwork with the bank, and that the account would be frozen pending closure unless she made the return transfers herself, which would actually be faster and cleaner for her. My paralegal friend had walked me through the entire process the night before. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't performing. I had done the work. The laugh stopped. She made the transfers by Wednesday. I verified each one. She sent cancellation emails to all 3 vendors and forwarded me the confirmations. The photographer, who had not yet signed a formal contract, refunded the retainer in full. I called off the engagement 2 weeks later, not during a fight, not as a reaction to any specific thing she said. I sat across from her at the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening and told her clearly that I didn't think we wanted the same things and that I hadn't been able to trust her since I opened that folder. She tried everything in order, the tears, then the anger, then telling me I was throwing away for years over a misunderstanding about a dress. I didn't argue with any of it. I'd already made my decision, and she could see that. She called my mother. She texted my friends. She posted a vague Instagram story about being blindsided by someone you thought you knew. That collected a lot of sympathy comments from people who only had her version. I didn't respond publicly to any of it. I didn't need to. My family already knew. My close friends asked me directly, and I told them calmly, with the documentation available if they wanted it. Most of them didn't ask to see it. They'd watched the last few months play out. They already had enough. She moved out within 3 weeks. She did not attempt to take the dress. She knew better by then. My grandmother's dress is at my mother's house, wrapped in tissue paper, exactly where it belongs. My grandmother's sister cried when my mother showed her it was safe. That moment meant more to me than anything else that came out of all of this. I spent a long time asking myself how I missed it. I think the honest answer is that I extended grace longer than I should have because I loved her, and I kept explaining away the behavior instead of looking at the pattern. The dress wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. The parallel planning wasn't a quirky surprise. It was a consistent, unbroken line of someone who saw the people around her as obstacles between herself and whatever she decided she deserved.